Hey gamers, today we're going to look at Bora Bora. Let's check it out. Okay, so I know what you're thinking. You're like, whoa, this is a lot, right? And yes, there's a lot of setup. In fact, this wins the award for the most busiest player board I have ever seen. Most likely you can kind of just ignore a lot of this stuff. But anyway, I'll explain it all in a minute. Setup, very simple. You're going to put out these cards here. Any order you want, doesn't matter. You're going to shuffle the God deck. Throw out 4 gods. Each player is going to start with 2 gods randomly drawn from the deck and 1 offering tile. They're going to have 4 of each priest. They're going to have 1 of these little purple god tokens. They're going to have all their tents or teepees out here. They're going to each start with 1 out on the board as well. They're going to start with 3 of these green objective tiles. The first one will be a light green one, basically an easier one, and the second one will be from a pile of dark green ones. And every round they're going to want to try to achieve 1 of those. It's going to give them extra bonus points in the game. They're going to have these little tiles with the little dice on them. You'll put them out 1 through 6 right here on the board here. Doesn't have to be in order. And then of course you will have 3 dice and 4 priests, as I think I talked about earlier, that you'll be playing with. You'll be shuffling both the women and the men tiles and then putting out a row of men and putting out a row of women right there. Shuffling the round achievements there, the achievement cards, the green tiles, and putting 6 out there. Now if it's less players like I'm having here, it'd actually be 4 or something, but I'm just putting them all out there just to show you. Anyway, you're going to shuffle all of the jewelry tiles and then place them out randomly on the board there. Now this game, as you see, this is the round tracker too. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It goes 6 rounds. Any of your purple god tokens go up here. Your little starters go on the score tracker and on the tattoo track there. Tattoo track will determine first player. But at the beginning of the game, you're going to pass these out first, second, third, and fourth. And these will change depending on the tattoo track. In fact, it even shows you a tattoo there to remind you of that. You're going to have some shells you're going to pull over to the side somewhere, and then a bunch of resources that you'll be using throughout the game. You'll have them over to the side, as well as more of these offering tokens. You're also going to put out these little fish tokens on the board too, shuffle them around and put them in the areas where you see the fish. Whew, okay, now we're done with setup. Let's move on to the game. Game's very simple. It's basically dice placement. You're going to roll your 3 die, and other players are going to roll their dice as well, and then you're going to start placing dice on the board. Now, the only rule is once someone places a die there, anyone else who wants to place there, a red one to place there, they could not put a 6 there. They have to put a lower number than a 4, so they could put a 3 there. And on my turn, I'd have to put a lower number than a 3, which I couldn't, so I couldn't take that action again. So that's basically kind of how actions work. So it is important to get first player because you can go anywhere without any restrictions. How the game goes though, again, very simple. This tile and this tile allow you to move over land and sea. Determining on what the pip is shows you where you can go. So for instance, I'm going to get a closer view of this board here to kind of show you what I'm talking about. As you see, for blue player here, if I put down a 4 and I used this little sea card here, I could go across the sea and set up a tent, grab a tent from my player board and set up a tent there. Now when I do that, I'm going to get that resource. It's going to be sand, wood, an offering, or where I am right now, a rock. And basically that's kind of how it goes. Now if I was to play a 2 pip, that number there, I could move my guy over here. Now I'd have to of course use the land tile for that and play a 2. What if I'd played a 4 here? Well, 4 is greater than 2, so can I move over? No, it has to be that exact number for me to move. As you see here, moving across this area would cost a 5 pip. So you need to have the exact pip count. Let me show you that again. There it is. You need to have the exact pip count. So a 5, 4, 2, or 4 there are the only ways that I can move out there. If I have any other dice on me, I rolled a 3, a 4, and a 5. So this 3 is worthless to me. This 4 can go here or here, and this 5 can take me across there if I wanted to. But again, the tiles I would use would be those first two. And basically that's how you travel and set up your little tents in the area. Now, if someone else were to play and they were to move into my area, you know, let's say I moved into Red's area. Well, I would bump Red from that area, I'd get the wood, and Red would stay there. He would just be over to the side. And this is important for in-game scoring, because at the end of the game, whoever's on that center spot is going to get the fish points that you see here, located here. And the fish points can add up to some huge points at the end of the game. They're basically 1 through 6, but if you control too many of them, you're going to get some big points at the end of the game, believe me. All right, so that is the first 2 tiles here. The next 2 tiles are very similar as well. It is a man or a woman. Placing a pip there, again, if I place there, Red could not place a 6 there, he'd have to place a lower one there. But anyway, that gives you a man or a woman to add to your tribe. And depending on the pip, you can get up to that amount. So I put a 5 there, I could get this, or anything below it. In this case, I could get something below it. And once I do, I would just, let's say I got, I put it on the guy, let's say I got this one here, and I just place it on my little player board. Now, that's important to have these. They have different icons on them that will give you certain things. I'll go over those in a minute, but the iconography, very, very simple. So anyway, that's how you get men or women into your tribe. The other one here is buildings. I showed you how you're accumulating resources. Like if I went here, I got a sand. If I got here, I got a wood. So I would basically grab things like this, you know, a sand and a wood, and I would place it on my player board. On my player board are the same icons here, and I can place it anywhere I want. Let's say I place a sand there and a wood there. Well, later on, if I chose this action, depending on what die roll I put here, let's say I put a 4 there, then I could take my 4 token on my player board right here, as you see, the number 4, and then I could place it basically over these 2 resources because I had built that. Now, once I do that, I remove those these 2 resources. They go back into the pool, and then I flip it over, showing that it's been built. Now, when it's been built, it has 2 little icons on it, a flower and a fire. The flower means you're going to get victory points determined by what round it is. In the first 2 rounds, as you see, now the icon that shares what we just showed you on the back is located right there on the board. Again, this is a very simple game, surprisingly simple. See that? It says, hey, if you built in the first 2 rounds, you're going to be at 10 points for building. If you built in the next 2 rounds, you would get 7 points. If you built in the last 3 rounds, you're only getting 4 points. Obviously, right? Because you're gathering more resources at that point. You've probably stretched around all around the building. So building early gives you some big points if you can do it. But that's how it works there. Now again, if I use my 4, I could never use my 4 again. I have to get 1 of each dice roll, and I have to have the resources to build out throughout that entire maze there. So that's building, and that's what you get points for building. And again, this is the building tile here. The next one, I'm going to skip and go to this one. It is the idol thing. You can get put a priest on the idol depending on what number you put there. So let's say that Red put a 6 there. He would take his little priest and he put him on the 6 track right there. Now it's my turn, and let's say I can place a 5 right there, and I can place a man. I'd place him on the 5. And if I play it again, I could put another man on the 4 there. Well, anyway, and what happens if someone else came along and I had a 6, you know? Well, what I would do is I'd push everyone down. Everyone would move down 1, and I would be there, okay? If I had a 6, it keeps pushing 1 down. If you're at the 1, you get pushed off the board and you go back to your player board. What this determines is at the end of the round, whoever has the most priest up there is going to get these purple god tiles, and I'll talk more about these later. They're worth 2 victory points at the end of the game if they're not used, but you're going to use them. You would put them on your little player board where you see the icon of a purple god there. But let's say it was a tie. Let's say it looked like this. Well, A tie goes to the person who is furthest up the track, closest to the purple tiles, obviously because they played a bigger die. So in this case, blue would still win, okay, if it was a tie. And you don't want, you want to pay attention to this, because if someone gets too many of these, they could really run the game, because those purple tiles are pretty powerful. I'll get to what they are in a minute. This one lets you do a number of actions. Depending on what type of die you put there, it gives that many actions. So if red put a 6 there, he gets 6 actions. Blue put a 5 here, he would get 5 actions. And let me show you on another player board what those actions could be here. So as you see here, this is the hand symbol, the same symbol that is on the card. So basically kind of shows you, hey, this is what we're talking about here. And so let's say I've had 5 pips. Well, I have 5 actions. So for one action, and these cost 2 actions. So for one action, I could activate a man or a woman on my board, or just cash in it for victory points. So I could cash in all 5 points for victory points if I wanted to, or activate a man or woman. What does that mean? Well, earlier, let's say I bought this man. I put him up here. If I activate him, I move him down, and I would score all of the tattoos over here. Or if it was a girl, I would get all of the shells over to the left-hand corner. Shells are basically money, is what you can use to buy jewelry at the end of each round, so you will want shells. But of course you do want men as well, because those are tattoos, and you would move up the tattoo track. How to move up the tattoo track? I'd move up 3 there. There are other ways to get tattoos that can move you up the board. And as you see at the end of the round, you can also score victory points, whatever's at the top number here. So up to 15 victory points, but that'd be a lot of tattoos you'd have to score in that round though. And whoever is furthest up the tattoo track would be the new number 1, and that would determine the player order going forward. If there was no change, then the order would stay the same from the previous round. But that's how the tattoo track works. It goes like that every round. You can score some extra victory points and hopefully get first player or retain first player. A lot of times people get these tattoos just so they can retain being first player, since it's so imperative to have it. Anyway, but that's how you can activate those. And it says here, hey, look, it only shows the tattoos and the shell. So it says, hey, you'll be cashing in and getting those. Now here's the this costs 2 action points. So if I have a 5, I can only do 2 of these because I only have 5. But anyway, one is like, hey, move a hut down to the corner of your board. What does that mean? Well, as you see, you have huts all surrounding your player board. And if you have people, to get people in there, to people live with you, because you want to get villagers in there, you have to get rid of these huts. You can't place someone in there if there's a hut there. Well, man, I can't be building and buying at the same time. I only have 3 actions per round, right? Well, what it lets you do is say, okay, for 2 action points, you can move one of your houses down to the bottom corner. So I can move maybe this house down to the bottom corner. And this house can carry as many as you need, just so you can open up more space to get more guys and gals. Or this one gives you another offering token. This one gives you another God card. You can get a God card. These are for 2 points each. God cards give you abilities in the game. Well, let's go ahead and just get to what these do here. Each one gives you a special ability here. For instance, let me get with this one first. Blue lets you break that rule of you can't place a higher die in an area. If you have blue, you can do that. You can place a greater than value than the die already there. So for instance, even though red normally couldn't play here because that's a 4 and this is a 6, if they gave a sacrifice token and cashed in this blue god, they could do it. Of course, the white god, pretty self-explanatory. Any die you put down counts as a 6. This one, the red one, for every time you're on a space, remember I told you at the end of the game, you're going to get the fish victory points. But what if I have a fish right here? It's 4 victory points. Man, I know that red or green or another player may bump me out eventually. I want to go ahead and score those victory points. I'll give a sacrifice to this god, and I can score whatever those victory points are for that round. This is very good. All these are great cards. Green can be used for, green and yellow gods can be used for later, so I'll explain what they can do later on. And by the way, giving a sacrifice to a purple god can do any of those powers. So this is like a wild card god, and that's why these get used a whole lot and not saved toward the end. So let's look at some of the other actions you can do besides getting an offering token or a god card. You can get 2 for 2 actions. You can get it for a wood, a stone, or a sand. And of course, that's what you would put on your player board to establish and get more buildings. Now, after everyone has placed out their die and they've taken all the actions they could on the board, then we go to the B phase, and it says A phase, dice. B phase, you get to do get the actions of a man or a woman, and that means you get the rightmost action of them. So you would pick one man and one woman, and you would activate them. So this guy gives me an offering tile. That's nice. This lady here gives me one of these 3 resources. That's really nice too. So I want to activate these 2, so I would. Now, if you had maybe, let's say I had 2 women who had this. If they all match the same symbol, then I could activate them all as one. So this would be one woman, this would be one man. If I had 2 men who gave me 2 offerings, I could activate them the same. So as long as they have the same symbol, you can do that. The only thing that breaks this rule would be the green card. Green card says, hey, you can do more than one different ability for a man or a woman. So again, let's say this token here, for this woman here, I want to activate 2 women and 1 man. So these 2 are the same symbol, they count as 1. This one's different. Hey, I can get a man who's 3 or below. Ooh, let me see. He's a 3, he's a 3. I'll get him. Okay, because he can give me tattoos in the game. That's really nice. Or maybe later on I wanted to cash in my green god, give an offering out to get this, get another man, and then get a tattoo and a food offering. Use 2 different abilities. So that's the green god, what he can do. Again, very powerful, very good card to have. Finally, you have the yellow god. Again, I'll go over what he does later on. Now, after you've activated your man and woman, that's where you resolve the tattoo track, where you give victory points according to where they are on the track, then reset it, and then dole out whoever the new number 1 is, if there is someone new. After that, you're going to check the priest track and then award someone that purple god tile. After that, you go and you buy jewelry. And you buy jewelry first round, second round, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, like that. As you're buying jewelry, you have to pay she-shells here. And as you see, they can have different cost here. This one costs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ooh, but it's worth 9 victory points into the game. This one costs 3 shells. It's worth 5 victory points. They also have some that only are worth 1. 1 shell and 1 point. But you can't buy those yet. That's in the second round. You have to buy in the first round. Every time you buy, you're spending the shells that you've gotten from ladies or from special abilities and buying a piece of jewelry. And then you're going to put all that jewelry face down right here on your player board where it shows the icon for jewelry. After that, then you go into your end of round achievements. Did you achieve anything here? And I have a few achievements here. This out of these 3, this one's like 5 huts here. This one's like 2 of these type of people here, which I don't have. This one says, hey, did you get 1 man or plus 1 woman? Yes, I did. Aha, this has been achieved. So for doing that, as you see, there is, and this is underneath under each one of these cards, a 6, 4, and a 0. If I didn't achieve it, if I didn't achieve any of these, I discard it from the board and I get 0 points. If I did achieve it and its fulfillment, I get 6 victory points. But if I couldn't achieve any of these, let's say that I only had 4 of these huts out, man, if I got 1 more hut, I could have finished this. Well, by giving a sacrifice to the yellow god, I can achieve it, but I'll get -2, which is why the 4 flowers on there, because that means I used a yellow god to achieve that goal. I achieved it, but I cheated a little bit, so instead of 6 points, I get 4 points. Now, it is important that you get, after you do one of these, you'll flip it over if you've completed and put it over in the checkbox there, and then every player will, not randomly, they'll pick one of these and put it on their player board. They always have 3 objectives every round, and they need to achieve one of those objectives there. Now, you want to get one that you probably already have. If you've completed more than one, that's fine. You want to complete one each round because you're going to get bonus points at the end of the game. Now, can you achieve more than one of these per round? You bet you. If you did 2, you can do 2 there. And you do as many as you want because you want to achieve as many of these as you can because you do get bonus points at the end of the game. Now, there's one thing I neglected to mention here. It was on buildings here. I forgot to mention the +1, what's that fire burning here? Because I see it later on my board. That's why I said this is just a mess here. This is supposed to show you all the different icons on each one of the guys and girls. And this is supposed to show you the god tokens and when they can be used. And right here, you see the pyre here burning. Once you complete a building, on top of getting those victory points for the round, you may also get a god or offering tile, a God card or an offering tile, or and get a tattoo or a shell. So I forgot to mention that here. Now, down below is in-game scoring. So after 6 rounds, you go to in-game scoring. Any purple victory tiles you have left count for 2 victory points each. That's why the 2's there. This is the fish. You would add up the fish. Remember, if you ended your hut in these spaces, you would get those fish points. Here, you would add up all of the jewelry that you've bought throughout the round and get those victory points. That's why the flower's there. And here, you're going to get 6 victory points every time you complete one of these objectives. And this is like, hey, have 12 men on your board. Holy cow, that's impossible. Have 12 huts out on the board. You could have done that. Have all 6 of your buildings built. You could have done that too. You know, clear your player board. Here's 9. You made 9 achievements throughout the end of the game. Or you had 6 jewelry throughout the game. These are not easy and you can't get them all, but you at least want to go for at least 2 or 3 of them. And whoever has the most victory points wins. Now there is a mini expansion of this called the Orange God Tiles. Basically, whenever you roll doubles, you get one of these and it gives you a plus or minus to one of your rolls, which is really good because, like I said, some of these dice determine on the pips on whether you can move or buy people or whatnot. And that's the game. Final thoughts. What do I think about the game? Before I get to that, there are 2 things I missed in my review. One is when you choose a God card, you need to replace it immediately. And then, of course, obviously, but I need to mention it, you need to replace all the tiles, refresh all the tiles and clear out the old ones and put in new ones. Okay, so there you go. Now, what do I think about this game? It's a fun game. I love Stefan Feld. I've loved 2 of his games in particular, some of my favorites, and I was told, hey, you need to check out some of these other ones. I was like, sure. Castles of Burgundy, not even interested. It looks awful. Looks awful. I may play it one day and change my mind, but when I see it being played, it looks terrible. I have 0 interest in that game. But Bora Bora, really fun game. It looks extremely busy, and I've looked at this in the past. I was like, oh, is this something I'm interested in? And then I see that player board. I'm like, nope, I'm done. But then I realized, I think it was a few years ago, my buddy got me to play Raja of the Ganges. Man, that board looks busy. And when I took a look at it, I was like, nope, too busy. Because some games go a little too Euro-y in a way. They say, well, we got the plain mechanics that every Euro has, so let's put a twist on it. Let's make it more difficult. And it takes away from the fun factor. I'm all about the fun factor. Now, Stefan Feld, he makes some fun games. So I have a lot of his games, and I seem to keep picking up more and more. And, these are pretty good. This one's pretty good. I do enjoy it. I do enjoy the game. I think that it's not too thinky. The board, even though it looks busy, isn't. And like I said, Raja of the Ganges taught me that lesson. So I say, you know what? Time to give this a second, review. When I look back over, it's like, yeah, let's give it a shot. And I'm glad I did. This is a really fun game. Do you need the Orange God mini expansion? No. It's nice to have. We'll play with it. But sometimes we were forgetting when we were rolling doubles to get one. But they are nice to have, but it's not a must. This game is fun on its own. Sadly, it's out of print, so I can't really recommend it. It's not, at the time of this video, it's not one of his most expensive out of print ones, but a little bit more pricey than I would pay for it. Probably around the $40 is a sweet spot for this game. Anything over that, you really have to like Stefan Feld, or you really have to like the theme or the gameplay to pay any more than that. But anyway, folks, that's it for now. Until next time, game on.